Postmaster General Louis DeJoy is testifying before Congress today about cost-cutting measures at the Postal Service. I'm guessing Alyssa Milano won't be in the peanut gallery for this one.
Jill Biden says she's confident her husband Joe will win the presidential election. Well, that makes one of us.
The Trump administration finalized plans to develop the largest remaining wilderness in the United States to oil and gas production. You know, Trump's really going to regret these deals when he realizes no more land means no more golf courses.
Congress is returning early from summer break to vote on a postal service bill. Darn, AOC had just curled up to read chapter 1 of The 5 People You Meet in Mike Pence's Nightmares.
All women, by the way. And finally, massive wildfires in Northern California have spawned fire tornadoes. Of course they have. At this point, it's only a matter of months until sharks figure out how to fly. And the Trump Report starts now. Welcome to the post-Dem convention Trump Report. I'm Christian Bladt, joined by my partner in mirth-making, Tamra Brown.
Hey there.
And a new distinguished look for the one and only Scott Moore. We're going, I was going to call that a goatee, but I think that's a Van Dyke.
Yeah, whatever, but
yeah, exactly.
We're just switching it up now while we're in this kind of permanent lockdown.
Yeah, and you know, I think I can't remember if I mentioned this on a past show, but before I was driving back to my home, I drove by in Burbank. There was a barbershop they were doing it all out on the sidewalk. And, you know, it's like going to be like 105 today, but it's like, if you really need a haircut, you'll sweat through it. So
I know, I'm getting there soon.
Yeah. I got my one haircut 2 months ago.
Me
already.
too.
Believe it or not, it's already been 2 months.
Same.
So I got to think about it. I'm like, yeah, I'll sit outside and do it because, I don't think anybody wants to see me do it. But anyway, overall thoughts on the Dem convention. Tamra, ladies first.
Well, I enjoyed it. I'd say the low light for me was the very initial kickoff. It was cute having the kids recite the preamble, but then when they went into America, not the kids, but America the Beautiful, and the Pledge of Allegiance, and then the prayer, I was just like, okay, it's really being laid on thick right now.
Well, also know your room. How many people really want to hear the Pledge of Allegiance and a prayer at a Democratic National Convention? Just imagine what we're going to get. They're going to do next week for the Republicans to show up. I mean, I think they're going to actually read the entire book of Genesis.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know, there was a learning curve for me to just get used to the nature of you know, the pre-recorded nature of it, and then cutting to the music videos. I felt like it was part telethon, part music video, part Zoom meeting. I guess that first night, I feel like the convention itself was trying to find its footing, but also me as a viewer was trying to figure out what lens to use to watch this. Because for me, it improved. Even just in that first night, it definitely improved.
Well, I think you definitely nailed it. The term telethon definitely is an accurate representation. Just imagine the annual Jerry Lewis telethon, where at the end of it, Jerry is trying to convince you that you want to vote for him for president. And then you have the whole week of the Democratic National Convention.
Jerry Lewis would never choose a woman as his VP.
You know, you're 100% right.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you know this, but the only joke I ever sold to Saturday Night Live was about that very topic, was about Jerry Lewis saying women weren't funny. So that's out there. It's very well documented. Scott, overall thoughts. Where does this rank for you? Between 84 and 88, or no? What did you think on the whole? Does this crack the top 5? What do you think about this convention?
Well, I have to say I agree with Tamara. Like, the very first night was a little bit clunky, and I what she said is a really good point that I wasn't even thinking about. Was it me getting used to this new format, or was it a little bit of both of me getting used to this format plus them trying to find their way in this new format? Just from my production background, considering what they had to work with, I really thought once we got past Monday into the rest of the week, I thought it was actually really well done. And like we were just talking about off camera before the show started, I really liked the fact that it felt quicker, tighter, almost more intimate too. You know, when you were listening to these speeches, it just felt like they were right there with you. You know, when Dr. Joe Biden spoke and she was in the school, I thought, you know, again, from a production standpoint, I was impressed that she was able to walk and talk with the camera, because that's actually a difficult skill set to do. But I liked it that it felt more intimate, and it wasn't constantly interrupted by applause. So the speeches went quicker, felt more compact. And again, considering what they had to work with, like the roll call was great. I think some of the stuff they should incorporate into future, you know, conventions, even when we get back to hopefully a more normal time period, that we'll be able to do something like that, like having everybody in each state that's representing their state with a great background. I mean, it was great. And again, it felt like a more intimate connection to everybody. And I thought, again, last night, instead of having the balloon drop, they did the fireworks, and they had, after Biden spoke, and had everybody in their cars, like honking their horns and everything. It was just a really cool way of being able to utilize what they had to work with in the situation. So I thought overall, once we got past the little bit of clunkiness on Monday, it really worked really nicely for the rest of the week. And I think a lot of this stuff will hopefully be used in future conventions.
Yeah, and I think, look, obviously your average American, especially your undecided voter, didn't watch that first night. They probably didn't watch much, but they certainly didn't tune in for those nights. And yeah, we were talking about this. A lot of the speeches I watched after the fact. So when you look at, like, you know, the CNN app, and you see Kamala Harris's speech, you know, 18 minutes, Hillary Clinton, 7 minutes. I'm like, Hillary only talked for 7 minutes? Oh, she really didn't try to steal the nomination from Joe if it's only 7 minutes. But I think that yeah, to each of those speeches would have been twice as long. And, you know, I mean, and let's be honest, I don't know how well Biden would do waiting for the applause breaks. You know, I think he would pause at the wrong moment, and he'd be like, eh? So, yeah, and I think that it's going to be really telling for next week, just looking ahead. I mean, obviously, whatever you think of Donald Trump, what he's best at is speaking in front of a large crowd and feeding off their energy. Now, I'm sure he's not going to have 0 people there in front of him, you know, but I mean, he's not going to have anything like what this convention would have been, like what he had in 2016. So I'm definitely intrigued by that, but I do think that for the most part, Democrats did a nice job. I think that they were able to show off a little bit more of their star power than the Republicans will. You know, I thought Julia Louis-Dreyfus was very funny with a few moments in there. A lot of attention for her referring to Mike Pence as Mike Poonce, which is an Australian slang for a homosexual. And I'm just like, wait, this guy's been in the public eye that long, and this is the first time this is the first time I've ever heard that. Right? So it's like she was clearly like sitting on this. She's like, this is gonna be great. And you know, and then I'm sure his wife didn't want to explain it to him, so he still doesn't get it. So but I think that let's just we can talk about some of the other speakers, but I really want to focus on Biden. I do think it was very much the speech that he had to give. And I'm not going to lie, it was better because he didn't have people there to try and cater to and react to. You know, this is exactly what he needs, how he needs to do it, you know. And I think that it just kind of reminded you, somewhere I saw on Twitter, now this was from the biographical video beforehand, but the story about about when he was in school and the nun made fun of his stutter, and his mom went down and told her that she would basically kick her ass. Somebody wrote on Twitter, is like, where's the story about his mom threatening to beat up a nun been? Like, this guy's been around for like 40 years and we never heard this before. I was like, yeah, we need more of stuff like that. Yeah. You know? So I think it definitely helped, you know, understand him as a person, because look, a majority of what this was, and we'll talk about some of the other speeches, was you really don't want to vote for Donald Trump. Oh yeah, you do have to vote for this guy Joe Biden though if you want Trump to not be president. No write-ins for Kanye. All right, you really have to vote. What did you think, Tamara, of Biden's speech, specifically Biden's speech?
I thought his speech was great. But real quick, I just want to say, since we just mentioned the overall thesis was you can't vote for Trump. I feel like the first night, you had mentioned that undecided voters probably didn't watch the first night, which if that's true, that's a shame, because the first night was the night that it was trying to, I'd say, pander to Republicans, to right-leaning, to conservatives. And I
Michelle
thought,
Obama was the first night. Michelle Obama
yeah,
was the first night as well. So
yeah. Yeah, and and the Republicans who spoke, but with their messaging to conservatives, I was a little confused at their strategy because of the fact that they were clearly speaking to conservatives, but at the same time they would say things about like how, Donald Trump doesn't know how to lead. They would tear him down, which, though it's warranted, that's not appealing to somebody who doesn't hate him. So I feel like their message to the conservatives was a little mixed for me as far as their strategy went. But uh, Biden's speech I thought it was great. I think we're all relieved that he didn't stumble and that he didn't say anything that became a Twitter joke the next day. And I thought, it was so emotional. There were certain points where I thought he was going to choke up, and I almost got a little nervous. I was like, oh, don't. That would be a little too far for me. But then, you notice, like, as his speech went on, the camera just got tighter and tighter, and he got, towards the very end, he got very, just like the height of emotion. It just was this like subtle building of drama throughout his speech towards the gravitas of the end.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the number of speeches he's given, I think it was interesting to see so many comments after the fact that it was the best speech that people had ever seen him give. And we were talking before we got started. A little bit less surprising that Chris Wallace had nice things to say about it, especially when he panned Kamala Harris's speech. But Brit Hume is always the guy who you're like, oh yeah, he wouldn't be saying that unless he was really impressed, because he's always going to grade at a curve. And there were several Fox News personalities, and I'm not talking about Juan Williams. I'm talking about people with personalities. But I think that there were a few of them who said that they were really impressed. This is what he needed to do. And I think the point that Chris Wallace made, Scott, was that Trump's whole argument is this guy can't string two words together. This guy's an idiot. Look at me. I'm a stable genius. And then you have, I don't even know exactly what the running time was. It was about 20, 25 minutes, somewhere in that range. And it's like, yeah, he didn't wet himself. He didn't have to push a glass of water up to his face so I think it was very impressive. Look, it's not basically like, he's not Obama. He's not Bill Clinton.
Right.
He's not that level of orator, but he shouldn't be trying to be one of them. He was the best Joe Biden he could be. And then we'll see in 74 days now, is it? Well, I mean, we won't find out for 84 days, but when people go and vote in 74 days. So just some overall thoughts from you, Scott.
From just Biden's speech. I would say this was exactly what he needed to give, not just to, take down that argument, which we all know Donald Trump does nothing but project. So every time he says something about someone else, he's really trying to deflect off of himself when he talks about, you can't string two sentences together, you're in mental decline, whatever. He's basically talking about himself. But the point is, he's trying to push that on to Joe Biden. And so for any of those like Republicans that are not Trump fans that might be open to voting for Biden, he needed to give this speech. But also he needed to give this type of speech for the Democrats. And like we talked about last week at this time, we also can't just be, we're voting against Trump. We need to be voting for someone and something. And so Joe Biden needs to give that type of speech to the Democrats out there to say, look, this is who I am. This is what I want to do. And to do it with some passion and emotion, like Tamara was saying. I mean, even when he was talking about his son Bo and you saw him tear up briefly, he gave that type of speech to then make Democrats feel a little bit more comfortable and passionate about voting for him and not just against Trump. So he had those two things that he really had to focus on to do the speech. And I think he was able to do both of those successfully, be able to prove that he is mentally there and that he's capable of being there and doing that for 25 minutes, is something that was important. And I think the way they even framed compared to Kamala Harris's speech the night before, you saw the prompters off to the side and sometimes she was looking both directions. And I think just from a production value, that didn't work as well. But like Tamara was saying, when they got a little bit tighter on the shot with Biden, he was able to look straight ahead. He's not wandering or looking other directions. And then when you got to some of those more emotional parts, you were able to tighten in even more and get that close up. And I think that was just really, really good. So he looked great. He was able to give this impassioned speech. And like you were saying, Christian, this really was impressive when you get people like Karl Rove, who was the architect of George W. Bush's two elections. And you get someone like that to be able to say that Joe Biden gave a great speech. And you get Dana Perino on Fox News to say this was a great speech. When you can do that, then you are really being able to get what that whole point was. So from both perspectives, he had the challenge cut out for him, and he succeeded in both, I believe, last night.
Right. I mean, Karl Rove is the perfect example because, it's still out there. We can all go back and enjoy it in 2012 when Karl Rove refused to admit that Mitt Romney had not been elected and that President Obama had been elected. He said that he had sources better than everybody at Fox did, and they had to go down to the decision desk. And he's like, no, I don't believe it. That's still one of my favorite election night moments. Is just he's just like, nope, Obama didn't get reelected.
Mine, that was mine too. And the funny thing was, I was actually watching that moment live because I switched between the same kind of thing. I was like, let me see what Fox is going to say. Yeah. And I happened to watch it live when Fox called Ohio for President Obama and then therefore the election. Yeah. And that whole scene was great. And I also still love the follow-up where they go through all the battleground states and Obama had won every single one and Fox was going through every state. And it was really hilarious. He's like, yep, Obama won that state too. Yep, Obama won that state. So it was great watching Fox News that night for sure. And I hope I can have a repeat of that in a few short months. But yeah, wow, which was impressive too.
Yeah, 4 years ago, we had a very different experience. Scott, myself, Chelsea, and Drexel, and we had some other people with us too, actually. And just watching, wait, no, that can't be right. Nah, we actually had to come back the next night because we were like, nah, this couldn't be it. But so I wanted to talk about some of the other big speeches, but I will, of course, highlight the low light for me, which last night was the support group for all the losers on what seemed like the most annoying Zoom call you could ever be on with, Bernie and Amy Klobuchar. And once Beto showed up, I thought everybody else's box was going to close. Like, oh, no, we don't have time. Jesus, who invited Beto?
And then the intentional separation of Bloomberg.
I know. Great. Yeah, exactly. I did think that was great. It's like, well, yeah, oh no, sorry, Bloomberg. But I think in general, they did a good job. Let's talk about Obama's speech. Barack Obama. We'll obviously also speak about Michelle's. But I think it was a very good Obama speech. You could see, look, he's so good at what he does, and maybe I'm so jaded. I'm like, did he make himself tear up, or was he that passionate? I can't believe that he was that moved by his own words, but I hope I'm wrong and that he's just like, yeah, it's that serious. I did think it was kind of interesting, though, the way that he did it was, it's kind of like if you've ever done a group project in school where, look, the one person does kind of all the work, but you have to give credit to everybody who was a part of the group because that's part of your grade. And you also don't want somebody to be like, what the fuck did you sell me out on that? Well, I thought we were in this group. So he's like, yeah, so I did this and I did that. Joe was there too. Joe did a lot of things. Believe me, just trust me. Joe really had a hand in that. And he's like, Joe made sure that we didn't get H1N1, and he kept other viruses from us. And I'm like, I don't think that's likely. I think if Joe got anywhere near H1N1, he would have gotten it. So, but I do think that he did a good job. Look, that's the best celebrity endorsement you're going to get is from Obama being like, yeah, look, I know this guy. Apart from a couple of hot mic moments, we worked really well together. But I think that he delivered a very Obama speech, and that was the night where everybody was like, "Oh yeah, that's what it's supposed to sound like when a president talks." I think that was the theme for what I saw on Twitter. What did you think of Obama's speech, Scott?
Again, I think it was something that, especially for Democrats, they really wanted to hear from him. He has been pretty good about not blatantly talking badly about his successor in the type of speech that he gave the other night. But I think for Democrats and progressives and for his coalition that had voted for him in 2008 and 2012, they wanted to hear this sort of punchback. And I think it was Brit Hume, was it not, that was like, oh, that's the worst, that a former president has ever talked about their successor. And I just sort of had to laugh. I don't know if it was him or someone from that world. I had to laugh in the sense that here's Trump every single day with a double standard, being able to call his predecessor treasonous and all these other horrible things about him, besides, the whole birther movement to begin with.
Well, and don't forget that he also went to his predecessor's predecessor and said that George Bush caused 9/11. So he has not spoken well about really any of his predecessors. I don't even think he likes Abraham Lincoln.
Well, I think he thinks he's better than him, from what we talked about with the Republican Party. But the point is like, that's a grotesque double standard that somehow a predecessor is supposed to sit back and let the successor talk crap about them time and time again and come up with these outlandish lies and totally denigrate them. But yet the predecessor is supposed to be on a different level and not make any kind of negative comments about their successor. So I found that double standard to be just really grotesque and hypocritical. But it was an important speech for President Obama to say and lay it out there and make progressives, again, he was able to be more of that attack dog now, which doesn't normally happen. That's usually the VP position to do, or candidate to do. But he was able to lay that out and be the attack dog, so that way Biden could then more talk about himself. Of course, Biden brought up a few things with Trump and the administration, which is part of when you're running against an incumbent. But the point was, everyone else was able to really focus on attacking Donald Trump and how inept he is, and same with Michelle Obama. And of course, all that got under Donald Trump's skin. But I think he did a very good job getting those progressives and those left-wing Democrats, his coalition, to get out there and say, yes, we wanted to see more of an attack from President Obama about how bad Donald Trump is and how important it is to go out and vote, because as we know, too many of us sat out in 2016, and we need to get those people back out and to vote in huge numbers to not have a repeat of the inside win that we got in 2016 of Donald Trump. So he did a good job with that, of course.
And when Scott says too many of us, he didn't vote that year. I don't know why. It came down to one vote, and he didn't do it. So remember, we blame Scott. Tamra,
I will never forget 2000, because I voted in Florida for Al Gore in 2000, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, if I did not vote, it would have been 538 instead of 537. I mean, that's how close it was. So I have always remembered that 2000 vote, and always made sure since then that not to miss it. Not that I would, but the importance of that every person's vote when it comes down to those type of numbers.
I would never miss a presidential election, but I'd be lying if I said every single year I'm there in November. Most years, but every once in a while I'm like, wait, what am I voting for? No, I'm okay. Tamara, what did you think of Obama's speech?
As we said, Obama is one of the best orators that we've ever had in the White House, and he's just a natural public speaker. But I didn't love his speech as much as a lot of people did. It was, of course, a great speech, but it wasn't a highlight. For me, it wasn't one of the highlights of the convention. There were other speeches to me that stood out more, but of course, Obama gives a solid speech no matter what. There just wasn't any particular part of it that to me was more than, I guess it's exactly what I was expecting. I wasn't surprised that he called out, that he held Trump's feet to the fire, and that's what he was supposed to do. And it just seemed very run of the mill, what to expect. So it wasn't one of my favorites, but it was still a good speech.
Yeah, I know. Look, I mean, your average Obama speech is still something to take notice of, but I will always point out the one time that I saw Obama speak in public was one of the 2008 debates, and I after the fact I was like, I don't get what all the fuss is about this guy. Hillary, Hillary crushed him in that debate, and I was very wrong. But I do understand that there is a connection. Well, let's talk about his better half. Let's talk about Michelle Obama's speech, which, as you noted, was on the first night. And I think that she's very outspoken. I think in general, I think she's never actually held the office, so I think she has a little bit more leeway. Also, I think that there was probably a little bit of people like, oh man, why is she talking? Because why can't we vote for her? Why isn't she somewhere on a ticket? What did you think of Michelle's speech, Tamara?
Her speech I loved, and it might have just been, to me, hers seemed a lot more natural, and it might have just been the environment. His speech was more presentational. Michelle's speech was like us here. She was framed as we are, and she was in, I don't remember exactly, like it seemed like she was in a more intimate setting than the other, like, more official speeches later on in the week. So it might have just been that to me it felt a little bit more personal, but her pointing out how Donald Trump has been given an opportunity at this point to lead, and he has just shown that he's not capable of it. And to be able to say that, of course, I'm already on her side, but it seems to me like that is a way of saying it, insulting Donald Trump without insulting him. That's just saying, like, he's just not able to do his job. And by saying somebody's not able to do their job, that's not a Donald Trump insult where you are just slinging an insult at who this person is. You're just saying you're not good at your job. And in many ways that's even more a more pointed insult, but I just felt her message was very clear that we need somebody who is able to elevate the presidency to what it is supposed to be, and improve our country, so we're no longer a joke to the rest of the world. So I really appreciated Michelle's speech, like so many people did.
Yeah, no, I think it was very effective, and it does set the tone, I think, for what was to follow over the next few nights. Scott, your thoughts on Mrs. Obama's speech?
Well, again, it's the same thing, like you said. I think a lot of people watched and like, gosh, I wish she was running, and of course, she doesn't want to, and she was not a big fan of even being in the White House for 8 years. So we know she was not going to run, and I know it was cracking Drexel up a lot, because you'd see posts and people would be like, oh, he's going to pick Michelle Obama as his running mate. But again, like her husband, she is a great speaker, and she's great at connecting to people. And again, that's why so many people want her to run, because of how good she is at that. But as you mentioned, she had that opportunity to be able to kind of put those first digs in there to start that week off with, putting, and it got right under Donald Trump's skin, because you saw him post that night. So again, it was effective. Again, when you're going after that audience of one and you get the exact result that you were hoping to get, then you've done your job. And it was very effective. And again, I think it reminded folks out there who might have sat out on the sidelines of 2016 thinking Donald Trump wouldn't win and they don't really need to go out and vote, and Hillary Clinton. In a lot of ways, part of the issue with Joe Biden is the same thing. The passion behind this candidate may not equal that to her husband. So by reminding everybody that, yes, Joe Biden was by my husband's side for 8 years and worked really hard, and this great administration, we can kind of bring that back, and everything reminded people of his connection to the Obamas and that presidency, and also helped to try to get people to, again, be more passionate to get out there and vote for him. So I think it was definitely the highlight of that first night, which it was planned to be. And she did what she did. The only fault I had was that they pre-taped it too early, and she couldn't bring anything up about Kamala Harris. So of course that fed right into some of the opposition, like, oh my gosh, she didn't say one word about Kamala Harris, and she didn't talk about anything else. And of course, it wasn't necessarily about the VP pick anyways, but I think that would have been my only fault with that, is that they would have hopefully waited and done it sooner, so they could have been able to get, you know, her reaction to Kamala Harris, or at least bring that up as such an important part of the overall ticket and history making that it was, like her husband.
Right. Yeah. I mean, having the luxury of pre-recording it, I think, was certainly an asset to the convention. But at the same time, you're like, you know, recorded that afternoon, maybe the day
Right.
before. You know,
Mhm.
this was from like the middle of April, and obviously, I'm kidding, but I think that you know, that is definitely a drawback. But obviously, that gives Kamala Harris an opportunity to speak about herself. And I think, like, look, if you follow politics and you've been watching the debates with 12 people, you know who she is. But if you're from, you know, certain parts of the country, you probably heard the name. And there were probably people watching who, when she walked out, they expected it to be Maya Rudolph. And then they're like, wait, who's this? You know? So I think that she did a good job of, I think, of this is who I am, and kind of, you know, letting you understand who she is. You did have the same note I did, Scott, about some of the production issues. It was a little bit stiff, especially when Michelle's was so casual.
Mhm.
Let me ask you first. What did you think about Kamala Harris's speech?
Well, you could definitely tell when she first walked out, besides some of the production issues and the way the prompters were set up and the way they actually framed it, and she's looking left and right, and you could see that. But she definitely started out, you could tell she was nervous, because when she first started her speech, it was a little halting. She was a little bit awkward and uncomfortable. But then she got into it, and, you know, it was better. And I loved her outfit and everything else. Like, I think, you know, all that stuff was good. You know, they compare her a lot to the Obamas, like you were just saying, with their orator skills and eloquence and everything. And moments of that, but it still felt a little bit more stilted than I had expected from her. And I also, the whole background was a little weird too. It was, you know, with the screen in the back, and it just, it didn't quite work for the overall aesthetics. But in general, you know, like you said, a lot of people in the rest of the country have no idea who Kamala Harris is, especially when you're talking about those voters in the suburbs of Ohio and Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. She's a California senator. You know, not everybody here is going to know Sherrod Brown is one of the senators of Ohio, Rob Portman, you know, so it's like a lot of people wouldn't be able to pick them out of a lineup. So this was a very important night for her to really introduce herself to America at large, because they don't really know her. And like we talked about last week a little bit, the nice thing about her biography was the fact of her immigrant family, and, you know, kind of the same thing with President Obama, you know, family coming over with nothing and building it up from nothing, and her kind of building it up from nothing and being able to get to where she is always something that relates to a lot of Americans, especially with immigrant family members, you know, who came over for a better life. And so that part is always really empowering for a lot of people. But as generally as their speech, kind of like Tamara was saying with President Obama, I was like, it certainly wasn't her best speech in that sense. And I think it could have been better, especially introducing herself to America. But in general, you know, you look at her, and I was watching her and I was thinking, yeah, this is going to be a fun debate with Mike Pence in October. Just knowing that even on her worst day, she's better at a speech and connecting with people than Mike Pence ever could be. So.
Yeah, I do think that that's really the night where she needs to shine, is in the back and forth with
Mm-hmm.
Mike Pence. And, you know, this is where her time in the Senate will certainly, I mean, just her resume in general, obviously, will really lend itself. What did you think of this specific speech from Kamala? I see, there's the two ways to say her name,
Comma.
and then I combine them. Yeah, Kamala Harris.
Comma.
Yeah,
Think of
Karma,
comma.
Karma,
It's
Karma,
Kamala.
Chameleon Harris. Old
Or
person joke.
Kamamala, or whatever her stepkids
Mamala.
call her. Kamamala.
No,
What
they
did
just
you
call
think
her
of?
Mamala.
What did you think
Which
of?
was,
Yeah, what did you think of Lady Marmalade's speech?
oh my gosh, guys, this is bordering on problematic. Her name is Kamala.
Yeah, but no, but people
saying
say
her
Kamala.
stepmom.
That's what
Yeah.
the problem is. Not everyone says Kamala. So I
It's
had them confused in my head. But yes,
Well,
Kamala Harris,
uh,
what did you think of her speech?
I did like it. I liked her speech. Yeah, and she's a great orator too. But she now one thing that I thought was gonna be, I thought it was gonna blow up because to me this was very intentional. Was when she talked about prosecuting sexual predators as a DA, and then she says, "And I know a predator when I see one,"
Mhm.
and then pause, clearly saying Joe Biden is no predator. I thought that that was going to be more of a talking point, but it
Yeah.
really was not at all.
Or where's the
Um,
meme where you cut that together with Bill Clinton looking in the audience like, huh? You know, I mean, like there's a few things that I did think were going to happen with that. You're right. I actually forgot about the moment though because there was no reaction to it.
yeah. And maybe that's it. Like maybe if there was a live audience, that would have gotten more of like a ooh or
Mhm.
something. So that, but it seems to have just passed over a lot of people. But and I'm glad that she said it because it does, that nobody addressed that. Nobody addressed, obviously why would they address the allegation? But it is important to, it is important to acknowledge it since that is, part of what Republicans are, what the nasty names that they're calling Joe Biden is largely because of the assault allegations, which at this point, have almost all but been forgotten. So I felt that that was a very important part of her speech, and really surprised that didn't stand out more to a lot of people. But I
Yeah,
really,
it's very difficult to have that as a talking point when your opponent is Donald Trump. If Biden were running against Mike Pence, it would be very easy for him to say like, and what about all these allegations? Trump will never, not never, I mean, but he knows that he shouldn't reference the allegations because of just how many he has. He doesn't really lean on that aspect of what he doesn't like about Bill Clinton. He knows he's got the allegations regardless if they're true or not. People know that that's a thing about you. So yeah, I think it's the ammunition just isn't there on that issue. And sorry, what were you saying?
yeah. And so I thought that that was great, that moment of her speech, but also just her talking about her background, her family, um, using she like uses the Tamil word for family. She I thought it was to me it felt as personal as it could in that vacant stage and everything like that. So I did really like Kamala's speech.
See, look what I did. I put it in your head, and you're like, "What's her
Hmm.
name?" So, yeah, I think on the whole, the Democrats did what they needed to, which is what they need to do in November, not shoot themselves in the foot. You got to present, you got to legitimately let people know what you stand for. You do remind them, I'm not that guy, and I think that they didn't have, your A-list Republican defectors, but, having John Kasich and some of the other people, and just some of the people who are talking about, how they're just not, Republicans who've never voted for Democrat are like, well, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. I think having that message and sort of something that, we were kind of touching on before, there's this idea of, there've been some outspoken Mormons who I think that is definitely a group to go after. Of this guy is literally everything that you oppose, Donald Trump. Like, you can't in good conscience, maybe you stay home and don't vote, but you can't vote for that guy, and I think that we'll see more outreach to groups like that, and I think it'll be the role of the much derided never Trumpers, the people who are your outspoken conservatives, people who are like somebody like Bill Kristol is very much maligned because he's been one of the most vocal never Trumpers, I would say that his magazine doesn't exist anymore because he was a never Trumper, speaking of the Weekly Standard, you know? So I think it'll be interesting to see the way that plays out. Now, before we talk, we only have a few minutes, but before we talk about what we expect for next week. I did want to talk about something that's sort of a minor story, but it is significant that Wisconsin has announced that Kanye West will not be on the ballot. And the fact that I'm talking about it is preposterous, but the fact that the Republican Party, I don't even know if it, PACs, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush. There are people who are interested in Trump being reelected that are very motivated to get Kanye West on as many ballots as possible. Now, I'm thinking that the majority of your Kanye voters are people who are not going to vote other than to vote for Kanye West. I don't know how many Biden people you're going to sway. You're going to probably sway just as many Trump people who are like, yeah, you know what? Yeezy makes sense. Do you think he's going to give me some free shoes? Sure, I'll vote for him. So I don't know. I mean, I think that it is significant because of what they're trying to do. If it were a different candidate, I think it wouldn't seem as preposterous. But Scott, I wanted to, before we look to next week, what does it say to you that Wisconsin was like, yeah, no, you're not getting Yeezy on the ballot? And look, the reason was pretty simple. They submitted some very questionable signatures, but they were 1 minute past the deadline. So they're like, no, the deadline was a minute ago. You don't get to do this just because you're famous. What did you think about that, Scott?
Yeah, I again, the thing is that it's put out in plain sight, and it's just, if this was any other presidency or candidate doing these type of tactics, it would be a much bigger story. But the fact is, it's just another garden variety day for the Trump campaign and the Trump administration with, doing very unseemly type of things. And I know their point is, like you're saying, because Wisconsin and some of these states were so narrow that it gave those states to Donald Trump in 2016 that have obviously been in the Democratic column since the late 80s, early 90s. But like you were saying, there was just as many people, because a lot of people know that Kanye and Kim Kardashian had gotten pretty close to Donald Trump and the administration. And so a lot of people that are going to go out and vote would not necessarily go and vote for Kanye if they were a Democrat or a progressive, because they already know sort of where it's. And again, it's very frustrating because they just play into, okay, are black voters or someone just going to vote for Kanye? It was just kind of a very base tactic they were trying to use, because as you were saying, enough Trump voters that might have not want to vote for Biden would just as well, that don't really like him, would vote for Kanye. And so it really wasn't going to be, in my opinion, something that was really going to help Trump in the long run, especially now where we see his poll numbers in these states and see where he is at. And we see that, each of those states has a Democratic governor and had popped up Democratic pickups in 2018 after his election there. So it just doesn't make sense to me in the long run of what they think they're going to get out of this tactic, because in a lot of ways it could hurt them just as much or more than it would the Democrats. And it's the same thing with voting, which is, in mail voting, which is a whole other thing too,
Sure.
which again could affect a lot of their own people as well.
Well, Tamara, I know you're not concerned because you're going to write in Lil Wayne. I think that's your approach that's what you're planning.
He's always had a great economic plan. If people far too long ignored Lil Wayne's proposals for forgiving college debt.
What do you think about the concerted effort, though? And again, it's less about it being Kanye West, but this movement to get him on as many ballots as possible.
Well, I'm a little confused. So are we saying that putting Kanye on the ballot is hurting Trump for Republican voters? I mean, it's
they're doing it to hurt Biden. That is definitely their motivation.
To have Kanye on the ballot would hurt Biden.
That's what they think.
That's less votes to Biden.
Right.
Yeah.
See, that's what confuses me, because I would think it would be the opposite, because so that's what you guys are saying. It would be the opposite.
That's what I think. Yeah, I mean, we've seen Kanye in a MAGA hat, like that's because kind of
okay, got it. Yeah, that's what you were saying. You were saying it's not going to be Democrats that would be voting for I agree. I agree. So Lil Wayne 2020.
All right. In our final couple minutes here, let's talk about what we're going to see next week. I think that the Republicans and then the sort of the more measured people who can sometimes occasionally get Trump's attention and then opinion will try to take, I think probably a more measured approach than what he typically does. But I mean, it's literally, I was going to say it's a crapshoot, but it's really more Russian roulette. You really don't know what you're going to get from night to night. Tamara, what is your big expectation? And then also just like a train wreck, like hope for something that goes horribly wrong.
Well, a large part of the DNC was these pre-taped segments of personal family stories. The Latino family who the father was a Marine who voted for Trump. The mother was deported back to Mexico. Or the family whose father was a Trump supporter. He caught COVID and died, and he said his only pre-existing condition was being a Trump supporter. Those types of stories were very poignant, and I don't think the RNC is going to be able to pepper their presentation with those type of stories for a couple reasons. First of all, they lack the diversity. There was so much diversity from every way that they possibly could, in every segment that they possibly could. There was so much diversity in this week-long presentation, but I don't think the RNC is going to be able to show that as well. They're not going to have as many personal stories because I don't know. I'd be surprised because I don't know what the narrative would be aside from I'm not going to vote for this Satan worshiping child molester. That's the thing. They'd have to weed out a lot of those, like, I could see them starting to tape one of the personal slice of life segments from somebody from Nebraska, but then they have to be like, right when the person starts talking about how, whatever part of QAnon is.
Well, that's literally what I was going to say is like, Tuesday is going to be QAnon night. They're going to get all of it out of the way on Tuesday. Yeah. And look, it's and to be objective about it, there are some things that they can very well focus on, things that people are scared about. The idea that people want to defund, but also defend, but people want to defund police departments and the level of understanding about that, that's something that people are legitimately scared about. When you see the fact that the protesting continues in Portland, I mentioned that to my wife yesterday. She's like, wait, that's still happening? I'm like, yes.
I think that's their only leg to stand on, honestly.
And so they have that. And it's like, are you scared about China? Because I saw that somebody posted that China didn't come up at all during the DNC. And
not true, because Biden did bring that up too.
Right, brought it up, and Don Jr. did talk when the 30 seconds that I watched Fox News after Biden's speech. That's exactly what Don Jr. was talking about.
Yeah, I saw. You know what? I did see Larry Sabato be like, "Well, actually, here's a moment that China came up," but there wasn't a lot, so you can say that it wasn't a focus. So, I mean, if they can have a message on these issues, I think especially appealing to police. I mean, the NYPD, 2 weeks ago, came out in support of Donald Trump, So I think that, and by the way, there was I did retweet this from comedian Nick DiPaolo when Mike Bloomberg said that New Yorkers know a phony when they see one. Then how do you explain de Blasio getting elected twice, which I thought was very funny because New Yorkers don't give them so much credit right now. But in any case, I think that it'll be interesting who some of the speakers are going to be. There's already a lot of posts about how, Scott Baio is going to get a primetime slot. And you were talking about some of the diversity, Tamra. I don't want to make light about his passing, but there was a short list that included Herman Cain on it. And now they're like, okay, now great. We got to find somebody else because he headed up, that there was a section of his reelection campaign that Herman Cain was a part of. So now it's like, all right, I got to find somebody else that people know. So I think it'll be very interesting to see, can they stay on that message? If Trump is just like, look, this is what's going to happen. You see what Portland is? Joe Biden's going to do that to America. It doesn't have to be true, But if you can make people believe that that's what's going to happen, he basically needs to scare people, I think. Do you think that that's accurate, Scott?
Oh, that's all they have. I mean, and we saw this in 2016 too. It was just a very dark convention, and it goes back to his inaugural speech. It was very dark, and that's all he has. And that's exactly what we're going to see. It's all going to be these crazy, over the top scare tactics about defunding the police and law and order and targeting the suburban housewives.
Chicago.
Yeah,
How many times is he going to say
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And targeting the suburban housewife that he from the 50s that he's going after. It's all going to be scared and fear mongering and anything they can do. And then they'll probably, you know, including the economy, like, oh, if Joe Biden takes over, you know, the economy's going to tank. You're going to lose all of your stocks and 401ks and everything else. I mean, all it is going to be on is fear and law and order, taking away your guns, overriding violence across all of America, like you're saying, from these horribly managed democratic cities. That'll be your entire country. Again, that's all he has. But the difference is that it's going to be hard to sell that when you are the incumbent. And that's what we've said week after week after week, is that when he's trying to go after this 1968 Nixon style law and order, Nixon was not the incumbent in 68. So you could say, look, if you elect me, I will make these changes. The problem is he's been the incumbent now, and now he's trying to talk about law and order and everything. Well, you've been in office now for 3.5 years. So of course they're going to lie and, like you said, make people feel scared and everything. But the ironic thing is you're the incumbent.
Yeah.
So you can't really stand on law and order when you've been doing this now for 3.5 years. And now you're trying to sell this new thing. So it's going to be difficult. And by the way, in 68, Nixon barely won.
Yeah.
Even with that going on, and even with the Vietnam debacle, which pushed Johnson out. So it's going to be a more difficult sell than it was in 2016 in that sense. But that's all they're going to be able to run on is fear mongering and scared. And they'll probably again throw in that Joe Biden's not good. He had one good night, you know, and that was it. But
yeah.
That's all they're going to run on. And so I expect it to be dark and just you know, very much in the same tone that it was in 2016, and trying to win by scaring people over and not with the optimism and the everyday thing. And again, going back to Biden, I thought he did good, and Dr. Joe Biden did great too. It was like they represented the populism, the every person vote that Trump always says in his populism, that he's the every guy and everything. But Biden and Joe and Jill really played that up as the every person when they're in that accepting the nomination and they're just in that library with the horrible lighting. I mean, it just felt so much more relatable and everyday than you will ever get with a Donald or Melania Trump. So, well, yeah, that's I'm expecting nothing but that next week.
And by the way, speaking of Melania Trump, if you enjoyed Michelle Obama's speech, make sure to watch Melania's speech, because there'll probably be some moments that seem eerily familiar. Anyway, that is all the time we have for this week, but make sure you join us next Friday at the same time, where we will recap that convention, and for better or for what maybe some of us are hoping is for worst, we will see how that goes. But until then, you can keep in touch with me at ChristianDMZ, that's Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to the Blackcast YouTube channel, where you can just have this show magically show up every time that we do one. And Tamra, where can people keep in touch with you?
I'm promoting TikTok again. Follow me on TikTok at Hey Tamra.
No underscore, right? Just Hey Tamra?
Only on Twitter was Hey Tamra not available, and I had to have that darn underscore.
That darn underscore. Scott Moore, where are you on TikTok?
I'm not cool enough to be on TikTok.
Okay.
I think I'm out of the age demographic.
Same here, yeah.
I'm like Joe Biden. You can call me on the rotary phone, but
well, I am older than 16, so I suppose I'm out of the age demographic.
That's true.
Too.
But otherwise, you can follow me trolling Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell during the convention, which Mitch McConnell will not be at. And interestingly enough, at Twitter at SMan80, that's SMan80, and let's see how right I am and how dark it goes next week.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can say about Mitch McConnell, but he knows he's running for re-election. He's like, yeah, I got to stay away from that. That's not going to help me, even in Kentucky. Anyway, thanks so much to everybody in the chat, everybody watching live, and everybody watching the archive version. We will see you next week.